Welcome to the Walk Around Podcast. Our goal is to share with you the insights, the skills, the processes, and the leaders that are influencing the retail automotive landscape today. I'm one of your hosts, Nick Funch, and as always, joined by Danny Vendrell. What's up, Danny?
Just happy to be here, Nick. It's great to see you.
Yeah, springtime. There's a little, everyone's got a little extra pep in their step this time of year. So I'm super excited about our guest today, too. Elliot Schor, who's an AVP of Sales Operations for JM&A Group. Welcome, Elliot.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Danny. Excited to be here with you guys today.
Yeah, I know, obviously, JM&A is near and dear to all of our hearts, and there's a lot of cool things happening, and look forward to exploring some of that. But really interested around you and in your current role and maybe what led up to that role. I know you've been an associate, I think, for 20 years. Is that right, Elliot?
A little less than that.
Little less than that, rounding up. But maybe get us started. Give us a little overview of kind of your role today, and then what other roles you've been that kind of led you into the role you're in today.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. It's been a great ride. I will say, at JM family, and in the JM&A Group for sure. Today I really, what I do is I help dealers, groups, OEMs. Help their profitability, help them sell more cars, help them retain more people, more associates, more customers. That's really what I do in my role. Now, I have a title and responsibilities, but at the heart of what we do, it's we're really just trying to help dealers and groups improve in any way we can. And so we like to think of ourselves as consultants, as trusted advisors to our partners. And so we try to look holistically at their business and figure out ways to improve their performance. Now, of course, we specialize that with insurance products, with financial service products that protect vehicles. But we do a lot more than that. We hope to, we strive to. I definitely took a kind of weird path to get to this spot.
Yeah.
Definitely was, never really knew about the auto industry. Growing up in New York City, there's really three businesses there. It's pretty much finance and finance and finance, and maybe some fashion on the side. But so I always thought I'd be in finance in some sort. But as luck would have it, I stumbled upon someone who impacted my life dramatically, that I met in the Bahamas at a casino table. And she happened to be from Miami. And it took me out of my New York world a couple of years after that fateful night, and moved down to Miami, and was fortunate to find JM family. I'd just been with JM family. I went down to University of Miami and got an MBA there, and started interning JM, and I've really gone through finance and marketing. I started in treasury, working on securitizations for our captive finance company, SETF, and just moved on to SET from there, and just did a host of roles leading up to this where I am now.
Well, I know we want to focus a little bit on automotive. I'm sure there's another podcast out there that's really curious about casino table and fate and what leads to that, Danny. But maybe we'll just have to save that for another day, or another pod. But Elliot, welcome. In your role today, it's my understanding you have some responsibility and support with kind of strategic partnerships and OEMs. How do you approach that from kind of because JM&A is well known around kind of the helping the dealers make more money, but how does that translate into kind of strategic or larger enterprise type relationships or OEM relationships?
Yeah, it's interesting. The strategic accounts are great. Our large customers, our large public companies. What's interesting working with them is we get to really be strategic partners. We do that on a micro scale with our dealers, but with our large strategic accounts, that where they have earnings calls, right? Every quarter, right? They need to deliver for their shareholders. And so we are a central part of that strategy for our large customers. And so we take that responsibility very seriously. And what I mean by that is, we need to be producing for them. And so, we're accountable as well. We feel accountable to their shareholders and helping them improve their profitability. So we get to be in the position to work with these amazing companies that have built just tremendous brand names and tremendous businesses for themselves in a very strategic capacity. So we get to be privy to their strategic plans. We get to see where they're going, where their next stores are planned, and we help them to plan how they're going to continue to grow their profits along the way. So it's a really cool position to be in, to get that vantage point. And what's really cool is you see all these large public companies evolving now, whether it be, ClickLane coming out, Driveway, or, some of the pure online retailers like a Shift per se. It's really cool to see how the business is really evolving around the digital transaction.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting, I think, too, when I think about that space is there's really you have your manufacturers and your OEM relationships that are kind of focused on that new car experience, and then dealers are focused on this kind of used car experience and the opportunities that exist in the used car world. And we're seeing more and more of that online, and some of that you alluded to. But there's also kind of this brand in between those two, certified programs, that is, I think, creating a lot of value for consumers. I think there's a lot of value for the factory and dealers as well. Talk to me a little bit about certified programs and kind of how you approach and think through some of those.
Yeah, to me, in my experience at Southeast Toyota Distributors, where I was fortunate enough to work with some of the best dealers in the world and had the opportunity to see certified programs in action on the ground. And, the thing to me about certified programs, especially from a manufacturer perspective, whether it be a Toyota, a Kia, Ford or whatnot, is, first and foremost, it's, from a dealer perspective, that's your brand, right? You've invested all of this money in facilities and you've put your faith in this franchise of a brand. And so it always amazes me a little bit when I hear of dealers who don't want to carry the certified manufacturer program, because to me, it's kind of like, if you're a McDonald's owner, right? If you own McDonald's, it'd kind of be like, yeah, I love McDonald's and I'm building a great McDonald's franchise or building, but the French fries, they're not for me. I'm just going to pass on the French fries. And that's the kind of the way I look at certified. It's overall an enhancement to the brand value. So from a dealership perspective, there's tons of benefits to it. It's part of your brand. It's offering the French fries at McDonald's, right? And so that's kind of the way we look at it from a dealer perspective. Of course, we do know that certified vehicles turn much faster than non-certified vehicles. We do know dealers have gross opportunities that they would not otherwise have. And I think one of the overlooked gross components is in the service department on that certified vehicle. So we try to give them a holistic view. Additionally, around retention, you get all these sort of retention benefits because you're continually associating the customer with your manufacturer brand and your dealership brand. So, from a dealer perspective, that's certainly how we approach it. Now, we also work, Nick, to your point earlier, we work with OEMs and we work directly to administer and support their certified programs. And so from a certified perspective, from an OEM perspective, there's tremendous benefits. And to me, it's the cycle of the car sale. And what I mean by that is it's the retention of the customer. You're bringing them into the family. Often the certified customer, it's their first purchase. It's their first car purchase. And so you're kind of stepping them into the brand. And so we see the data where it shows their customer comes in, they buy a certified vehicle, their next vehicle, they're stepping up into a new vehicle in that same brand. So it kind of starts them off. And then the other thing is just residual values, right? It feeds, residual, to support a manufacturer needs to support leasing programs because they are a critical part of any manufacturer's new car sales strategy.
Yeah.
But the way you get to good programs there is by strong residual values. And the way you could really augment your residual values is by having a strong certified program, where you're building your residual value of your products up stronger. And it's just this great cycle where you see brands like a BMW does it really well. Toyota does it exceptionally well. And you see that it produces this great cycle of new car sales and used car sales over and over and over again. So there's a lot more holistic benefits to certified than maybe people realize.
Yeah, there's definitely an ecosystem there around the certified program. It helps your new cars, helps your used cars, helps all that. But, Danny, it's interesting. I'm thinking about this. A hot topic we've been discussing a lot on the walk around recently is around searches and how dealers can create more kind of organic search volume back to their dealerships. And it seems like certified is a natural fit for that too, because if I'm a consumer and I'm sitting here Googling, I want a Kia certified vehicle, I've got to have them on my website because it's going to just point them back and help there. Am I seeing that correct?
Yeah, I mean, now more than ever, especially with some of the stories we've heard and just being in the industry over the last year, new car manufacturing down, the inventories that a lot of dealers experienced that being in a tough spot. And you saw the values of used cars and CPOs rising throughout the year last year. And so having the program that it's got a name on it, it's got a badge on it, right? It looks official. There's an ability for the customer to see that and understand, hey, this was evaluated to a different degree, right? It's not just kind of a used car off the street. It's something that there's a program around it. And so that's something that definitely builds value.
It's cool. So Danny,
you guys mentioned, Google searches, and because you guys are right. People are searching. And I don't know if you guys ever check out Google Trends, but it's really cool because you can see what people are searching. And, if you put in certified vehicles, used vehicles, that trend over the last few years, it just keeps going up and up. People just continue to search for it. And you're right, Danny, if you don't have that certified vehicle in your inventory, you're not part of the party, right? You are literally not going to get a click. And so it's another great benefit, driving traffic to your website.
Yeah, there's a direct and trackable impact that you can go and you'll be able to see kind of what that looks like. Speaking about trends, here's my seamless segue. Elliot, I know that you were very heavily involved in a new report that JM&A Group just put out, the Dealership Performance Report, the first time that has been put out. One of the trends that was in there, I know I was flipping through it just earlier this morning about CPO, and that some of the data that JM&A has been able to pull, sometimes CPO cars are turning up to twice as fast. I know a data point on there, TCUV, Toyota certified used vehicles, 30 days versus non-certified used, 67 days. With Kia, 41 days, non-CPO, 77 days. So just some great stats there to validate the conversation. So talking about trends, something I'm curious about, and I know that is outlined in the report, are F&I trends and how things evolved and changed over the last year. So I'm curious, just from your perspective, you gave us the walkthrough earlier, talking to dealers, talking with groups, public groups, OEMs. What has the conversation been like in your perspective around F&I over the last year?
That's a great question, Danny. And it's funny you asked that in a way, because I'm looking at, I have a little clock right beside me over here, and I'm looking at the date, and it's staring me right in the face, and we're doing this, and we're here in March, and this marks a year for us, for everyone, for the whole industry, right? Forget about for the whole world, right?
Yeah.
Of the day, the time everything changed, right? I can remember where I was about a year ago when it was like no one knew what was going to happen, right? Whether it be personally or professionally, it was like, something none of us have seen before in our lifetimes. And so, I could tell you, over the last year, having many conversations with dealers, it's, it went from, am I going to have a business in a month? And just the range of the roller coaster of emotions has been unbelievable. And not just from the industry perspective, but also from a personal perspective, right? And it'll be a year that we are now in the midst of this pandemic. So, we saw F&I really have a strong showing last year. I mean, it was remarkable, right? Vehicle sales were pretty strong, all things considered, right? It wasn't exactly up, but strong, in my opinion. But the dealers were able to well overcompensate that reduction in volume with increased grosses. And, there's a lot of sort of reasons why. And I know I'm curious, Nick, I know, Nick, you also talk to a bunch of dealers, a lot of dealers. I'm curious, to me, some of this is psychological on the customer's perspective, right? They want to be protected, I think is a critical thing. But I'm curious, Nick, what have you heard from the dealers that you've spoken to over the last year in terms of, how they think the performance has gone?
Yeah, I think the one first off, like we're flipping the script here, which is a little different. Put me on the spot. I enjoy that, but I think the dealers have been pleasantly surprised. I think there was an unknown. I think the retail automotive as a whole, if I think about the business, is very where there's a will, there's a way, and the dealers I've talked to, it's. We got to play the cards we're dealt a little bit. And so I think that, when we think of, and we see the numbers and we see the data to back it up, I think that the proof was really in the pudding, that it took us a little while to get our footing. But once we kind of figured out that there's still a need with consumers, there's still I think a need from a variety of different ways. One, to purchase the vehicle. And I think we saw more consumers potentially shift away from ride sharing and some of this because they valued the personal space that their own vehicle provided them. And then there's all the things that go along with that, and consumers have different appetites for risk. And when you think about that, and you think about F&I products, whether we're covering, potentially a loan, or we're covering the mechanical pieces or prepaid maintenance on a vehicle, I think different consumers gravitate towards kind of that opportunity to really protect their investment throughout their ownership period, and we saw that reflect in both PVR performance for dealers, as we saw some really significant gains across the stores. And then also product penetrations as well, which to my recollection, certainly were extremely high.
Yeah, no, it was a great year for the dealers. I mean, it's crazy to kind of say that in a way, considering all the turmoil and personal tragedy that went on. But unfortunately, the pandemic produced winners and losers, and certain industries gained, certain industries were devastated, like the cruise industry, as an example. It still hasn't recovered.
Yeah.
The auto industry was remarkably resilient. And, to your point, I think, you saw people in major metro areas, they didn't want to ride the subway anymore. No. They didn't want to take the bus or the train. And that led to this kind of, just a real sort of demand for personal car ownership, something that had been really on the decline for several years, in the sense that, the younger generation has now grown up with car sharing and has grown up with ride sharing, and they are more inclined for an Uber. And so there's been this big question in the industry as to where does personal car ownership go over time. And so I think the pandemic brought a reality check back to the notion that your car is really more than just a mode of transportation. In many cases, it's your dining room, right?
Yeah.
I tell you, right? I'll admit this. I don't know why I'm admitting this on a podcast, but yeah, I eat in my car, right?
Oh. Who does such a thing?
Right, but it's your dining room, right?
Yeah.
I mean, driving your kids to school, it's your living room, right? You're having family conversations in there. It's your gym, it's your gym closet, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of different things. And, I think about the new mother, right? and who has a baby that they have to put in a car seat, right? Those types of things, to me, I've always believed personal car ownership is here to stay. And there's a lot of situations where you wouldn't want to share necessarily.
Yeah. So, well, I think the other thing too, you mentioned it about the industry as a whole. I think we benefit from kind of this pent up demand. And if I need a mode of transportation today, that need doesn't necessarily go away tomorrow. Where, a meal or something along those lines, once that window is gone, it's gone, right? Where if I need to replace my vehicle today, that is still going to exist until I replace my vehicle. So, but I guess I'm curious, and how do you think it's going to impact how dealers transact, how customers want to transact moving forward? I mean, certainly there's a big shift in desire. From your own perspective, or what are you seeing around how consumers want to transact, and what do dealers need to be doing to kind of give consumers the experience they want?
Yeah, so I mean, that trend, consumers have wanted to transact more online. I don't know necessarily that's the entire transaction. I think there is a segment of the population that wants to do that. And it may be a growing segment, but I think most consumers want to do pieces of it online. They want to make it more efficient for themselves. But the reality is, we know consumers, they don't, generally speaking, don't impulse buy a car, right? There's a lot of research leading up to it. They want to know, is this the right car for me? And they want to also know, how do I protect that car once I buy it? So we see more and more research being done at home before they go into the dealership. But I think that at the end of the day, the thing that a lot of other companies outside of automotive do really well, they just give the customer an easy way to do business. However that customer wants to do business. And I think really that's been the epiphany of 2020 in a sense, from the dealer perspective, because, dealerships have been very successful over the last decade, coming out of 2009 in, the Great Recession. And it's been just a decade of remarkable automotive success. And, 2020 put a pause on that, and the dealers really had to rethink their strategies. A lot of dealers had been on this trend of omni-channel purchasing, or modern retail, however you want to call it, for a while. But really in 2020, it was a real awakening for all dealers that, you need to be where the customer is. And so now we see a lot of dealers jumping on board with digital retailing tools, virtual F&I tools, and things of that nature to try and get the customer a better experience and really meet them where they're at. So that's been a real revelation in the industry. And I think it's definitely here to stay. You see all the major large public companies doing something in the space. The valuations of Carvana are astronomical. It just shows that the market is ripe. And so, dealers, like you said it before, dealers are a resilient group, right? They are resourceful. They will shift when they have to. So I fully believe in everything that I've seen out of the dealers. They are more than willing to change as the customers demand it.
Yeah, Danny, there are some watch outs there, though. I think, for years, manufacturers have kind of led the charge with dealers around kind of customer surveys and the feedback loop. And one of the biggest questions is, around the transaction time. And customers forever have kind of said that, it takes too long. And I had a great mentor of mine who used to preach that that's not what they mean. What they mean is they don't want their time wasted. It's not about the length of time. It's that they don't want to waste it. And so I think a challenge for us as an industry is, as we think about digital retailing, as we think about the research, because this isn't an impulse buy that customers are doing, how do we give the consumer credit for the work they're doing and not have to hit the reset button when they get on the showroom floor, because that becomes a friction point for the customer. And I saw recently, we were doing some work and we saw kind of a digital retailing tool that kind of had everything, and it wasn't able to kind of narrow down and use the data that the customer had already provided to kind of create a better experience for the customer. So, the cool thing is we're still kind of in this learning environment. And I think we got a long ways to go, and I'm super excited. I think the pandemic has kind of accelerated that customer experience. Do you think it'll? Yeah, I guess I was just going to ask you, like, do you think it's going to impact performance? I mean, like,
it's interesting. Yes, I say there will be an impact. I don't.
Okay.
Everything we've seen so far has shown that performance does not degrade with the transaction online. It's different, but the performance doesn't degrade. The interesting thing to me about digital retailing, and you hear a lot about the car industry, and it's so far behind. And, why can't they be like Amazon or Apple? And there's a lot of realities to me about the car industry, about a car purchase that kind of fly under the radar, that sort of create friction that's outside of the control of the dealer, the manufacturer, even the customer. One of those is regulations and laws. Many states require wet ink signatures still,
right,
which prevents a pure online transaction. So, the laws have to catch up with the technology, with the desire of the consumers in one regard. Another thing as well, that to me is very sort of not spoken about enough, is that the role of a sales manager, a business manager, is not just to sell. They put deals together, right? We know most customers, and these are interesting stats, but they're real. Most customers come in with negative equity on their vehicle, right? It's their existing car. Most customers come in with low or poor credit, right? That's the reality of the United States. And when people talk about digital retailing online, often they're talking about an 850 FICO score. They know exactly what they want. And that's like the perfect transaction, right? The easiest. But most car transactions are not there. That's not the way the transaction goes. The dealer is providing a real service to the customer to help them to make that transaction a reality because of that negative equity, because of that credit. And so that's some of the things that, digital retailing is kind of scratching the surface on that perfect transaction.
Yeah.
But that's where the business really, I think, has to evolve to create that is that customer that does come in with negative equity, that does have maybe less than perfect credit. How do we get that customer done online?
Yeah, that's such a good example, because I think, and you even mentioned there, like the Apple, the Amazon example that we sometimes hear kind of applied to our industry as a whole. But it's true what you say, because one of the things about Amazon and why that works, there's two sides of the coin, right? There's obviously it's an easy transaction. Obviously it's quick, it's painless, it's frictionless. But the other side of that is no one's involved other than the consumer in that transaction. You can go and you click the shoes and then buy and see you later, and the box shows up, and you don't have to be involved with anybody. Whereas, like you're saying, the dealers still today, we talk about modern retail, we talk about the technology, but the dealer provides a very real service to most of the people that are coming into the door. And so there is that people component. And then to your point, Nick, validate the consumer research. If you can validate the consumer research, there's so much horizon in front of us when it comes to modern retail. But if you can just make them feel welcome, and when they set an appointment that they want to see this specific car, that the car's there, the person they picked is going to be there, they're available at the time, things like that, that's like, it's blocking and tackling, but it is a hill to climb for a lot of dealers when we talk about the consumer experience.
Danny, I'm going to put that into focus for you. Just this morning, my lease is up on my car. I've got to find something new. I thought I found the right car. So I put a lead in on the vehicle, and it gave me an option. How do you want to be contacted? Email, phone, text, right? So I clicked text, right? Easy. That's my preferred method of communication. And what happened? 2 seconds later, my phone's ringing. Right? And it's like, speaking of phones ringing, no worries. You're a popular guy there, Elliot. But so anyways, I think that's just like an example of giving customers kind of the experience that they want. Elliot, this conversation has been fantastic. Want to just pivot away from automotive and kind of your thoughts quickly before we kind of wrap up the conversation. You have a successful career, and I'm just curious, any key like leadership advice you've gotten, mentor provided you, any kind of key advice you would pass on, any kind of nuggets that you think about frequently to kind of help guide your perspective, and just get your thoughts there.
Yeah, it's funny. By the way, I could see my face turning red.
We can too. Don't worry.
Listen, if you also want to see Elliot turning red, make sure you're watching this on YouTube. Little plug for the YouTube channel. You too can watch Elliot's face turn red.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Well done, Danny.
Yeah.
Look, I've been very fortunate at JM family, and prior to have great people to guide me along the way. I think the biggest thing, there's been so much that I probably could give here, but what's really coming to mind, I think, are two things. And to me, a career is it's not linear.
Yeah.
That's I think my biggest thing that I've learned. It never goes straight up. It's going to zigzag along the way. And I think that's the cool part, right? Like that's where the growth happens, is in the zigzags. And so, I think we've all been at points in our career where we're maybe not happy where we are, or, and I think the reality is that, and I know it's a little cliche, but it really is about the journey, not the destination. And so I try and focus on the journey, try and focus on, what can I pick up each and every day to grow further, and just know that, life is not linear, right? Yeah. Just like your career is not linear, life is not linear. And, the curveballs are going to come, and the better you can roll with them. And there's a great quote from, it's a Buddha quote, actually, that I love. And, let the past make you better, not bitter. And I think you often see people in their careers at times, fall into that category. And so I try to live by that. I try to let the past make me better, and focus on that. And so I try and take growth and learning from everything I do, and, the different roles that I've had. So, that's what I would say. And I think, don't underestimate the power of relationships. Adding business value is critical in any company. But relationships is typically what makes the difference. Your genuine concern for your fellow person, right, and their well-being will always make your business value enhanced. And so I believe most businesses are relationship businesses. And so don't underestimate the value of relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. I think both of those well said, and certainly advice we could all take to heart. But Danny, as we wind down the conversation, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but what's the biggest thing you could take away from today's little chat?
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of things. I would say, number one, first and foremost, Elliot eats in his car with his gym shoes. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, there was something else he does in the car. Some family, like, it's weird while he talks to his family.
But anyway, so that's very revealing, and maybe there's a part 2 to this podcast. No, I think the frictionless transaction, validate the consumer research, make it easy. And that doesn't mean that your dealership is Amazon tomorrow. It means what's kind of the step one towards that. And every day, what can you do to get a little bit better? What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I think for me, and I've been kind of reflecting on it since the minute he said it, and it wasn't too long ago, but is around, there's a tremendous amount of value that the sales managers and the experts on the showroom floor provide to a customer. And don't lose sight of that. I think, there's, and as part of that, how do you give all customers the experience they want? And I think it's having that, those kind of servant leader managers that provide the value to the customers. So certainly something that I think a lot of people could apply, and just kind of shifting that perspective. So Elliot, this has been fantastic. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
we'll certainly, I enjoyed the conversation. If you liked what you heard today, please make sure to like and share this podcast. We've got a lot of great stuff on tap, and don't forget to hit the follow button below. So, Elliot, thank you again. Danny, always great to chat. Producer Drew, you're a charm, and we'll talk soon. Thanks for listening to the Walk Around podcast.
Thank you.